Okay, so we're back with part 7, and we left off part 6 with an updated model. We've included the Order of the Garter, the Royal Secret Society, just there behind Saturn, always in the background, the Garter there, and we've also updated the Baphomet with a lovely little rainbow, just there. I think that works very well. And we updated the Baphomet also with the Great Reset. Watch part 6 to understand why we've included these things. And I'm going to bring in a little crown for the Baphomet as well. I think he should be crowned, he should be anointed. Given that he's the product of the Solar King and the Lunar Queen, he also sits beneath the Garter, the symbol for the Royal Secret Society, which I think is works very well, crowning the Baphomet. There are some other reasons why I'm doing this, but we'll get into that at some point. We also, in part 6, updated the collection of images from various organizations and companies and individuals pushing for the sorts of innovation in tech, future world tech, smart tech, basically, future tech relating to the home, travel, identification, surveillance, and the cyber world. And whenever we see pushes for this innovation in future tech, or so-called innovation, whenever we see pushes for these ideas in technology relating to these areas, we always seem to find some Saturn-related imagery, whether that's the cube, the hexagon, rings, the seal, you name it. It always seems to be there. And since uploading the part 6 and updating this collection of images, there has been another development regarding this Meta. I'm sure you've all heard about this by now. This is the rebranding of Facebook. I don't use it myself, so it has no bearing on me whatsoever, but I think this is important to include in this episode. Facebook is now Meta, and good old the CEO, good old Mark Zuckerberg, introduced Meta, and we can just see here that it brings together apps and technologies under one new company brand, and it also mentions this idea of the metaverse. So what is the metaverse? Let's have a little look at what Merriam-Webster say about it. Well, it's a real word for a virtual world. There are a couple of little snippets here that I think are key to just underline. It's a highly immersive virtual world where people gather to socialize, play, and work. And good old Zuckerberg himself says that he believes the metaverse is the next chapter for the internet. And that's very interesting, that this push for developments, innovation in the internet to bring in this virtual world, this push for future tech, and their official branding. This is official branding that they used for Meta. That official branding for Meta should include the planet Saturn, no less. Absolutely fascinating, amazing that this should be their own official branding, their own official introductory branding. And it was definitely official introductory branding from Meta. This was, I grabbed this print screen from the website which is used to introduce it. And there was some more promotional information material, and I'm sorry to have to do this to you, but I'm going to bring in Zuckerberg here. But he gives us a good explanation of what's going on. All of these apps, which you probably will all be familiar with, they're all going to merge at some point to create this virtual world. And Zuckerberg gives us a nice little demonstration of that with this animation. There they are, all merging together, and they form this little multicolored ring. We've seen that before back in part 5. We'll be getting back to this multicolored ring as well at some point. But then that turns blue, and then you get a little pinch in it, and it becomes this infinity sign. and that's the official logo for Meta. And it's absolutely fascinating that it should have this Saturn branding in it, but there is a little bit more from Zeeborg. Sorry to have to do this to you, but he at one point in the video he's talking to one of his friends. Yep, apparently he does have them, and he's trying to organise some kind of meeting in the virtual world, and he decides they're going to meet in the virtual world. So he thinks, well, what am I going to wear? What is Zeeborg going to wear in this meeting? So yeah, he brings up his avatar, and he goes through his clothing just to see what it looks like on his avatar. And the first bit of clothing that he brings up here is a skeleton suit. A skeleton suit, yeah. And I don't know what he's doing with that in his virtual closet, but there you go. And it's really handy for us because Saturn rules the skeleton in the occult. I'm sure that's just a big coincidence. Nothing to worry about. But it shows us a bit more about the idea of the metaverse in this promotional material. We'll get away from Zeeborg now. And it shows us that there are new horizons coming into view. New horizons for the home, worlds of the worlds, and workrooms. And you can see there these lovely avatars in their home. I don't know why you need a home for an avatar. Surely you've just got your own home. But here's the workspace as well. This is you, or maybe this is you, in your virtual workspace, talking to your clients or perhaps your colleagues, virtually, of course. And this was interesting here in the middle, this little area. If we just blow this up a little bit, that particular little part. Here's a little cube, the cube of self. I thought that was interesting to just bring up there. Is the metaverse a cube for the self? Well, we'll definitely be getting into that at some point. Well, hopefully not into it, but we'll be taking a look at it. But when you've done at work, when your virtual self is done at work, when you're virtually all tired out, you can go and hang out. You can go and take your avatar and go and hang out in, maybe, is this a disco or something? And you can go and dance under a cube if you like. Get that full cube Saturn worship. Get that going full tilt. Sure, it'll be great fun. And when this first came out, when this whole meta business was introduced back in October, a lot of people thought that it reminded them of the movie Ready Player One, which is also about a virtual world, a cyber world, if you like. And that's really interesting as well, because not only does Meta's own official branding have Saturn-related imagery in it, so does Ready Player One. This is one of their official promotional posters, and if you can see there, there's a hexagon. It's got a lovely little 6 pointed in it as well. If you just have a look there, you can see the little 6 pointed in the hexagon. Very synchromistic. And there's going to be a couple of little spoilers here, so if you haven't watched Ready Player One, then maybe pause this, go and watch it, come back, proceed at your own risk of having the movie spoiled. But at the end of the movie Ready Player One, we see this character who's got the mask on there. We see his avatar talking to the inventor of the virtual world, and it features the planet Saturn right at the end of the movie. This is the inventor of the virtual world, crowned by Saturn there, and this is the avatar of the character in the poster. And I thought this was absolutely beautifully synchromistic. And eventually the creator of the game, I think he's called Halliday, he goes through this door and he reveals this button underneath Saturn which turns off the virtual world. Absolutely incredibly synchromistic, I think. You can see Saturn there with the rings. I just had to include this. Speaking of rings, we have our new friend, our new Scariant, our new danger, threat to human civilization as we know it. Another ring, absolutely beautiful there, and lovely bit of resonance here. Omicron is the 15th letter of the Greek alphabet. It's also representative of O, the letter O in the English alphabet, which is also the 15th letter of the English alphabet. And the 15th letter is very resonant with the Saturn magic square, because each of the columns here and the rows and the diagonals all add up to 15. So that resonates amazingly well with this Omicron. And there was another little bit of synchro mysticism regarding this as well. I'm sure you heard about it. There was a film that was going around recently, pointed out as being called Omicron as well. And there was some promotional material for this film that went around. Obviously, this is a film from the 60s, so, good few decades old now, but people were saying that there was some information in this that we should consider about our current predicament. But what was great for me was this lovely little bit of synchromysticism, that this film had some promotional material back in the early 60s, and it was this featuring these lovely little Saturns here. I thought that was absolutely beautifully synchromystic. Just had to include that. We also had this. I was actually going to include this in the previous episode, but I just thought I'd save it. But I think it is important to include, so we'll bring it in now. This is the World Economic Forum, and this is from back in July last year, so just a few months into the whole so-called crisis. And it's pushing this, the passes, the new health passes on your mobile. And if we just, I'm not going to play the video, it's actually a little video this, but if we just take a few images and just scan through those, we see a Saturn seal there. Lovely Saturn seal. The only reason it's broken up here is because of this raised sort of area, this raised platform, which is raising this shadow that's being cast on this screen. If this wasn't here, then these would meet and you would have, a perfect Saturn seal. Obviously looking like that. What are the chances that this would be in a push from the World Economic Forum for this new tech? What are the chances that this Saturn seal would be in here by accident? I just absolutely can't believe that this isn't there on purpose. So I thought that was key to include. And we had this story recently, actually. This is another great bit of information to put in, I think. So a Swedish company offers the crisis, the so-called crisis pass that gets under the skin. And yes, you guessed it, you had this lovely little chap. He's the chief disruption officer for this company pushing this tech. Is it disruption officer? What is he, disrupting people's freedom, perhaps? No, I'm not sure what he's doing. But here he is, this lovely little chap, and he's pushing this. Obviously, he's telling you where it goes in your arm there, and then you can scan your information. So convenient. It's so convenient, and it's great to end freedom and autonomy, bodily autonomy, and things like that. And the great thing is here, this is the door into the building. You can see this in the video. It's got this little emblem here. Let's just have a look at that. This is the official sort of website logo. So let's just do the necessary on it. Cube within a cube. Absolutely fantastic stuff. You can see it all on his jumper, his sweater, whatever it is. So there it is, another push for tech, this time surveillance tech, health-related tech, with the company logo being a cube within a cube. Just once you do the necessary on it. Absolutely amazing stuff. And the great thing is on this imagery as well, and I'm not sure this was meant to be here, but not only do we have this cube within a cube on the door to this company pushing this future tech of this microchip, included in this little image here is this. And if we just blow that up, we get a lovely seal. Absolutely fantastic. There, we get a double whammy in this image from this video. Thought that was key to include. Absolutely fantastic. So let's just update our collection of pushes for big tech, all these logos and info regarding these pushes for future tech in health, ID, surveillance, you name it. We're going to update it here with Meta, obviously. It's very easy to do that. We'll just include that. And this epicenter as well, this cube within a cube. Maybe the epicenter is the cube within the cube. There we can see it on his jumper, his sweater. And that's exactly where this little chip goes in your arm there. So lovely bit of update, I thought, for this imagery. I thought this was all key to include. All found after uploading part 6. Absolutely amazing synchron mysticism. Is it all just a big coincidence? Or is it something else entirely? But I also want to take another look at the model. Let's just go back to the model briefly. Well, we're going to be taking another good look at this, actually. We've seen how this model is made in previous episodes. And the Baphomet here being the central figure. Watch the previous episodes in the Synchronicle to find out how we put this model together. But this central figure of the Baphomet resonates with these other images. Obviously, the divine androgyne, the product of the Solar King and the Lunar Queen, is an androgyne. So is the Baphomet. Obviously, they've got the breast there, human breasts, and very sort of male torso. He's half Capricorn goat and Aquarius man, but he resonates with the divine androgyne. And the Baphomet resonates and inspired the Devil Tarot card, obviously with its as above, so below arm positioning. And the Devil Tarot also resonates with the divine androgyne because we get the male and female here, as we do here, and they're both kind of chained to the kind of central image there. So all these images resonate with each other absolutely beautifully. And another thing that resonates with the model and with this central figure of the Baphomet is this, John Dee's Monus Hieroglyphica, the hieroglyphic monad. And I'm going to be getting into this quite deeply. And I'm going to bring in a little colorized version here just to make it a bit better to look at. And this book is a book basically written by John Dee. It's available online. You can download it for free. You can read it. It has been called the most obscure book ever written by an Englishman. It's full of riddles and alchemical references and astrological ramblings, and I've read it myself, and it is very difficult to penetrate, to get right to the heart of the matter in terms of what Dee is actually getting at here. But let's just have a little look at it for our own purposes. We'll just go into who Dee was first of all. He was born in 1527. He was an astronomer, an astrologer, mathematician, an occultist, an alchemist. He's considered by a lot of people, a lot of scholars, to be the foremost scientific genius of the 16th century. He was court astronomer for and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, no less. So, very prominent figure in history, this guy John Dee, who wrote this book, the Monas Hieroglyphica, where he tells us all about the hieroglyphic monad. So let's just have a look at it. What have we got first of all? Well, we've got our lovely little pillars here. Boaz and Jachin are these. Well, they certainly have the sun and moon on them, which resonates absolutely beautifully with the pillars on our model, with the Solar King and Lunar Queen there. It's already looking very promising. And we have this figure in the middle now. This is the monad. This is John Dee's monad, which this book is about. Let's just take a closer look at this. If we look at the monad in the middle, bring up the planetary glyphs, and just focus on the sun and moon there. Obviously, the sun and moon are on these pillars, and we see that the figure here, the top, the head of this figure, the monad, if you like, is a combination of the sun and moon. The sun and moon in union, basically resonating very well with our Solar King and Lunar Queen. We're even standing on the sun and moon. As you can see here, that resonates amazingly well with this figure, the cover of the Monas Hieroglyphica. And this little area here, we'll call it the head of the monad, resonates amazingly well, I think, with the divine androgyne, because it's the combination of the sun and the moon. And we've seen that obviously before with the divine androgyne. So I think this figure here resonates amazingly well with the divine androgyne in the middle of our model. But not only that, John Dee also brings his own key in to decipher. There's lots of keys to decipher this monad, which John Dee presents, and he shows us there that this figure here is certainly a combination of the sun, lunar, and sol, the sun, so the sun and moon in unison there, represented here, resonating, I think, absolutely amazingly well with the divine androgyne. And I'm just going to bring in this because it's a little bit clearer. It's an English interpretation of that cover, so it's the Sacred Symbol of Oneness by John Dee. And I'm just going to colour in that little figure there, make it a bit brighter so we can see it a bit better. And John Dee also, in his book, the Monas Hieroglyphica, he brings in his own planetary glyphs, his own symbols here to help us deconstruct the monad. We've already seen how the sun and the moon combine to create the head of the monad, but then there's the body, the sort of the arms and the feet, if you like, of this figure. So let's just take a look at that. We've already seen how this is the divine androgyne, but let's focus in on the rest of it. And let's just start with Saturn. Bring in sort of an enlarged version of the monad. We see here that Saturn is represented in the monad. If you look at it there, that's John Dee's own key, so this is definitely Saturn, this little bit. But if we see the monad, if we look at the monad, we have a mirror image of this reflected on the other side. So it's like this. So that means that we've got two Saturns here. We've got two Saturns according to Dee's own planetary glyph key. Now, where have we seen this before? Where have we seen this before? Here's a little version of Dee's model here. Well, we've seen it on the model. So if we just strip this right back, if we just strip this back to its basics, the model, what have we got? We've got the monad there, John Dee's monad. We've got the sun and the moon combining here, fitting absolutely beautifully in the center of our model, the sun and the moon. And then that resonates with the divine androgyne. And then we've got this idea that we've got a double Saturn as well. And of course, this 0 degree line in the model sits between Capricorn and Aquarius. Capricorn in the old tradition is ruled by Saturn, and so is Aquarius. So we have our double Saturn there. So already it's looking very promising to put John Dee's monad into the model. But let's just go back to the imagery of John Dee and his monad, Monas Hieroglyphica. We get another key. We get another bit of the key from John Dee. And this time it's Jupiter. Now this is the figure that I've always seen to represent Jupiter. It's this figure here. D includes another figure to represent Jupiter. This. I've never seen Jupiter represented by this figure before. I've only ever seen Jupiter represented in the occult in my many years of investigation, many decades. I've only ever seen it represented like this, but John Dee decides that it should be represented like this. So let's have a little look at that. So really what we've got here in this part of the monad is, on one side we've got Jupiter according to Dee's own key, and the other side we've got Saturn. So really this part of the monad is a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction by Dee's own key, by John Dee's own key. This is a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. Now, where have we seen that before? Well, if we go back to the model and our 0 degree line, Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. This happened during the Great Mutation, obviously, on the 21st of December 2020. And I think that gives us absolutely ample reason to include John Dee's monad as the perfect resonator for the Baphomet in the center of the model. It works absolutely amazingly well, I think. So let's just go through that again. We've got the Sun and Moon in union in the middle of our model, a product of the Solar King and the Lunar Queen right in the center there, resonating with the Divine Androgyne. And we've got the double Saturn, according to Dee's own key, a mirror image of itself, Saturn here. Got the two Saturns ruling Capricorn and Aquarius. And if we consider that the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction there as well, given Dee's own key, I think that works very, very well. And just a little bit more about this book. John Dee actually gives us information about this book in terms of when it was written. He says that the book was finished in the year 1564 at Antwerp. He even gives us a little bit more detail on that. He gives us the actual time frame. It was from the 13th of January to the 25th of January. So over 12 days he wrote this book. And he wrote it in the year 1564. And that's very interesting when you bring in an ephemeris chart for the year 1564. Now, obviously, this is a Julian calendar. We were still in the Julian calendar then in 1564, so everything's kind of 10 days behind what it is now. But if we just look at the Julian calendar for the month of the year that John Dee wrote this book, we've got a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction right here in the month that John Dee wrote this book. And it's actually on the 0 degree line of Leo. This is Leo, so Jupiter and Saturn are conjunct together in Leo on the 0 degree line of Leo. So that's the opposite line to our 0 degree line in the model. And just getting closer there to when Dee started the book on the 13th, given his own admission. We also see that round about that time we get also a Sun and Moon conjunction when Dee starts this book. You can see there the Sun going into Aquarius. Obviously it's on the 11th of January because it's 10 days behind the Gregorian calendar, the Julian calendar. There's the key. So the 1st of January in the Julian calendar is the 11th of January in the Gregorian calendar. So there's 10 days difference. But this is what would have been the astrological reading for D in his time. So we see that just as D starts his book on the 13th of January, the sun is at Aquarius on that 0 degree line. And as he starts the book, the sun and the moon are both conjunct at 3 degrees on that 0 degree line of Aquarius. Absolutely amazing stuff. So let's just have a look at that astrologically. John Dee wrote this sacred symbol of oneness, his Monas Hieroglyphica, deconstructing his creation, the monad. He wrote that during a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, and he wrote that during a sun and moon conjunction at the same time, happening on this year of 1564. And if we just bring in the monad there, if we put it side by side to a depiction of the zodiac wheel with these configurations there, it's almost like a mirror image of itself. We've already determined by D's own key that this is a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, or it's a double Saturn. But we get the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction here, and we get the sun and the moon conjunction here, beautifully reflected in the astrology of the time when D wrote this. Is this what he was getting at? Was he underlining a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction and trying to point people towards the 0 degree line here, the sun and the moon, the solar king and lunar queen, and this 0 degree line, and the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction of the Great Mutation? Many years later, perhaps he was. Not only that, it's just to underline that that's this pole, this polarity in the zodiac between the 0 degree line of Leo and the 0 degree line of Aquarius. So the monad reflecting that absolutely beautifully. But not only that, he gives us obviously this date. He wrote this book, The Monad, in the year 1564 at Antwerp. He also gives us the time frame as well, from the 13th of January to the 25th of January. So not only did he write it during a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction and a Sun and Moon conjunction, he also, if we strip back the model, wrote it during the period that the 0 degree line is the marker for, the 20th of January. So D wrote the Monas Hieroglyphica during the transit of the sun over our 0 degree line. Absolutely fascinating. So the monad fits absolutely perfectly there. Not only that, John Dee, a contemporary of John Dee, actually, who actually met John Dee, also interested in the occult and alchemy, etc. And that contemporary was a gentleman called Heinrich Kunrath. In his own artwork of the Divine Androgyne, he also includes the monad right in the middle of the Divine Androgyne here. So the solar king, or the solar male, and the lunar female. Kunrath, who was the contemporary of John Dee, puts Dee's monad right in the middle of the Androgyne here. Absolutely fascinating, I think. And of course, the Divine Androgyne resonates beautifully with the other figures that we've seen, the Baphomet, the devil from the tarot card. All of them are absolutely amazingly represented by the Baphomet. So I'm going to bring in here, I'm going to update the model with the monad, John Dee's Monas Hieroglyphica. I think that sits perfectly there, resonates absolutely amazingly well with the Baphomet. Even has horns and little feet and arms there. We can also bring in these pillars just to underline that and to emphasize how well it resonates on the model. And I think I'm going to do a little kind of separate video about this book, John Dee's Monas Hieroglyphica, or the Sacred Symbol of Oneness. So I think there's a lot more to this book that needs to be investigated. I might have a little separate project regarding this, just try and unlock a bit more of it perhaps. But just regarding Dee, there's this famous picture, this famous painting of John Dee. Let's just try and enlarge it a little bit. Here he is, John Dee, performing some kind of conjuring trick, some kind of magic there in front of Queen Elizabeth there, Queen Elizabeth I. Now, regarding this picture, there was actually an investigation done of this picture. Somebody did some x-rays of it. Let's just see if we can bring this up. Yeah, somebody did some x-rays of it. And here's a little article about this from The Guardian. Sorry to bring the mainstream media in here, but this is just to give it a little bit of legitimacy. So that John Dee painting that we saw there was actually x-rayed by some group investigating it. And this is what they found. The painting revealed human skulls, a ring of human skulls around John Dee. Absolutely fascinating that these should be there, but it was painted over and sold, so they were covered up. But there's John Dee performing some kind of magic trick, and surrounded by a circle of human skulls. Just what was he conjuring in the presence of our great monarch? Who knows what he was doing there? But all very interesting. Anyway, let's move on from that and just move on here. I did say in part 6 that I was going to look at these images again, just to try and fathom what's happening. Why are they talking about, well, why are they bringing in, whenever they talk about pushes for future tech in the world of health, surveillance, cyber world, travel, identification, you name it. Why are these images, why do they always seem to pop up? Saturn related images, the cube, the seal, hexagon, the rings, etc., even Saturn itself. Well, let's take a look at that, and I'm just going to underline that a little bit here. I'm not going to go too much into it because I'm running out of time. It's getting to be a long video, but we'll just try and do an introduction to the idea of where I think this is going. And to do that, I'm going to bring in a book, very controversial book, and the only reason I bring this book in is simply as a reference tool. So obviously that's the Bible, and just want to take a look at a couple of passages from the Bible. This one, first of all, from Amos 5. But ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch, and Chiun, your images, the star of your God, which ye made to yourselves. And there's this other one from Acts. Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, and the star of your God, Remphan, figures which you made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. So these two figures here, these are passages from the idea that God is punishing the ancient Israelites for worshipping Chiun and Remphan and Moloch. But let's concentrate on Chiun and Remphan for the time being. A lot of you will have come across this information, but let's just set the groundwork for where we're going to be going. When you do some investigation into these two figures, well, let's just go to some Bible dictionaries. A lot of them say that this is probably a reference to Saturn and Saturn worship, the planet Saturn, an idol to worship Saturn. Chiun there, and Remphan, or Rayfan as it's sometimes pronounced. We have the Smith's Bible Dictionary and ATS Bible Dictionary, Easton's Bible Dictionary, that say that these two figures of Chiun and Remphan reference the planet Saturn. We also see that in the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. Chiun there, this Hebrew Kiyun, is transliterated in Amos, etc. And it also says that we should think of this as Saturn and Saturn worship. We also have the Encyclopedia Britannica from 1911 saying that Remphan and Chiun, or K1, is the planet Saturn. So there's a lot of evidence, a lot of suggestion that the inclusion of these things Chiyun and Remphan in the Bible are referencing the planet Saturn. And that's very interesting when we kind of put that into context. Those passages reference the ancient Israelites being exiled. At one point, it even says that God says he will carry them away beyond Babylon. So it's about the exile of the ancient Israelites. And they are exiled because of their sins. One of their sins includes idolatry, worship of Chiyun, the star of Remphan. We've sort of identified that is Saturn worship, according to a lot of sources. So how interesting is it? How concerning is it that when this group returned to their homeland after being exiled for worshipping these things, Chiyun and Remphan, as we've seen in various sources, when this group, the ancient Israelites, returned to their homeland and created a new flag for their new land, that should also include a star like the star of Remphan, and like the planet Saturn, it should also include a hexagon on it as well. How concerning is that, given that they were exiled, according to their book, by God for worshipping something that must have looked pretty much like this figure, the Star of Remphan. And let's not forget here that this flag was created in 1948 before the discovery, or so we're led to believe, of this figure, this hexagon on Saturn. Both of them feature this hexagon. So what's happening here, given this timeline, and also that this book comes from a period, some say 2,000 years ago? Is this synchromysticism? Is this synchronicity? Is it just a big coincidence? Or is there something else happening here? How can passages from a book from 2,000 years ago be so represented so accurately almost 2,000 years later by two separate incidents separated by many decades? Absolutely fascinating, that, I think. It's a big question to ask. So that's the groundwork for where we're going to go with this series. We're going to pick this up again in part 8.